And we're live.
We're officially streaming. Officially.
I don't actually see it on the YouTubes yet.
It's a little delayed, I've seen.
Yeah. YouTube, checking to make sure we don't say naughty words.
No. It has an algorithm for that.
There we go.
It automatically deletes our naughty words.
Did they really add that recently?
No.
Oh, I was going to say, surely not.
No one would be that surprised.
It is funny, though, because, you totally believed us. This was not something that would be, out of bounds, right? Who knows
what was that? I saw the artist that was one of the original one of the original Google artists, and he did this, cartoon that was "Don't be evil," and then their next logo, and then the next logo, and it's, striking lines through it. And then the last logo was, hopefully they won't notice.
Yeah, that's pretty much, I think, how it's working out.
So did anybody find any rumors on how Kaseya got the key?
No.
I'm hearing anywhere from, Biden talked to Putin directly to they paid to they hired a company to hack into.
Oh, no, they totally paid, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah. They went from 70 million, probably got it down to a nice cool 7.
Yeah, so. They negotiated. They probably had a negotiator that this is a new profession, by the way.
Yeah, I know. Brand speaking.
Yeah, and they negotiated it down, and they were like, oh, $5 million is really not that bad, guys. If we all pitch in,
Hey, if we just cut every employee's salary by 5%. Not the executives.
No. Those guys get raises for bringing us out of hell.
This is
what I'm saying?
We need leadership, and he showed rock solid leadership. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of BHIS Talking About News, which is beginning to look more and more likely that is actually going to be what we're going to call this in the long term, because we are far too lazy to actually come up with something catchy. What we do have is a catchy theme song. We have No More Free Info said the music is for reals. That is by Bo Bullock or Daft Hack. The man is awesome. So check out his stuff, which is very, very, very cool. Also, we have Noah is on, as always now. I mean, he's becoming a regular. And we have Ralph, who is definitely the regular, and Ryan, who we're still looking for a good excuse to fire, but he keeps taking it away from us. And
if you've let me stay here a whole year now, so.
Yeah, he's like the Wesley and the Dread Pirate Roberts. It's like constantly, very well done, Ryan. I'm very likely might fire you tomorrow if you do something wrong. So
it'll be inconceivable.
And I've had people call me out, they've DM'd me on Twitter, you need to be nicer to Ryan. So
mean to him.
The first day you call me the serial killer, but that's because I was wearing your shirt.
Yeah,
literally, it was literally your shirt.
Yeah, that was a bit creepy. It was that it wasn't a BHIS shirt. And that plaid shirt is interesting because I gave it to Ed Scotus at the last hack fest that I did for the Sands Institute, and somehow it came into your possession. I think that Ed discarded it,
and Jason adopted it and he said, "Here, put this on. Trust me, this is going to be fun."
Smells like Old Spice and desperation. All right, so let's get jumped right into the story. The first one that I want to talk about is the Petty Palm vulnerability. Am I pronouncing that right? Because I mispronounce things horribly because my grasp of the English language is pretty poor.
Oh, don't ask me. I'm worse.
No, it's Petty Potom.
Yeah.
Petty Potom. Doesn't it sound like it should be like a James Bond
the
Petty Secretary?
Yes.
Hey, Miss Petty Potom.
British?
Yeah, so
the Petty Potom. It's a Harry Potter trick here of vulnerabilities.
Now we have all the people that are British are your British accent is horrible. That's right.
Horrible.
Because I'm not British. So the Petty Palm vulnerability, I want to set up a little bit of whenever you're talking about authentication, right? You can have the standard Kerberos authentication, Microsoft's implementation of Kerberos. You can also have landman authentication, which some people will say, oh my God, that's really old. It doesn't exist. Stick with me. I'm going to talk about that here in a second. You can have NTLM, then you can have NTLM v2. So there's multiple different ways and multiple different configurations within these different authentication protocols that Microsoft uses. And it's important to understand they're authentication protocols. They are not hashing protocols. An example would be Landman challenge and response is basically just sending I think it's a 16-byte challenge the server elicits to the client. The client then takes its password hash, rolls it in with that 16-byte challenge, sends it back to the server, and then it uses that challenge to decrypt or, I guess, unravel the password hash and check the password hash. All of this is sent clear text, by the way. So it's a bad protocol. Now, why am I talking about Landman? I'm talking about Landman because NTLM is the exact same as Landman authentication, except instead of sending the Landman password hash, it sends the NT password hash. Now, the difference between these password hashes is substantial. With Landman, you're basically taking your password, you're going to encrypt, you're going to use it as a key with DES, and you're going to encrypt KGSG exclamation point @ symbol pound prompt $. And whenever you're using NT, it's better. It's still not great, but it's an MD4 hash of the password instead. So the problem with this is one, it's really easy to reverse pull out password hashes and crack them. And yes, you can reverse and you can crack passwords with NetNTLM v2. Tools like Hashcat and John the Ripper have had it for years, except it's a lot more difficult. Now, whenever you get to other authentication protocols, they're more resilient against replay attacks because there's actual timestamp information. If you're looking at Landman and NT, there's no timestamp, there's no nonce, there's nothing. You can just basically replay authentication. But this particular vulnerability, it gets a little weird because, correct me if I'm wrong, Ralph, like this one, like I can normally steal your password hash with NTLM and Landman, but this is weird because you can trick the domain controller to authenticate to you where you can reflect and you can actually get certificates for the domain controller. Am I reading that right? Because that's like a whole nother level of awesome. It's not even it's like a reflected relay of awesomeness attack.
Yeah. So let's step it back just a little bit. So the way this is going to work is that when you're normally on an internal network, we can capture net NTLM v2 hashes, right? And the way that we do that is we kind of solicitate them, right? And we'll use something like responder might be an example of some way to using what do you call it?
Like NTLM relay X and some of those
exactly.
tools,
so
right?
Well, hold on. So when we're using responder, what we're actually doing is we're poisoning the table, right? So that we can, and we're using, there's two different protocols that we're actually attacking here that if they're enabled, LLM&R, for example, and some of these to what we're trying to convince users to do, or systems, excuse me, is to authenticate to us, okay? And they authenticate to our attacker-controlled system via net or by sending their net NTLM v2 hash, okay? Mm-hmm. And we capture that hash. That hash is salted, so it's unique with every transaction pretty much. If we are able to reverse the plain text out of that, or pretty much the NTLM hash, we can get the user's password, right? So I can use Hashcat to try to guess user's password by having this hash. It's not super fast, but the point being is I already have some mechanisms to convince users to send hashes to me via or net NTLM v2 hashes, not their NTLM. That's different. These are authentication hashes, okay? And so we already have that, but this is a little bit different. What we can do with this vulnerability is we can actually send a request to a domain controller, and we can tell that domain controller to send its system hash to us. So we can just say, hey, computer or domain controller, send us your system hash, please. I would like that, right? And every computer in the domain has a hash, right? A password for the computer itself. It's a computer account. And that computer account it's not a password that you set up or anything like that. It's an account that Active Directory has. And so I can elicit the domain controller to send me that computer's hash, okay? Now, what that means, though, is that we can take this one step further. So another attack that we could do, and back to our further example, this is common, right? Or this is attack that's been going on for a while, is in the responder example. So I was able to get these net NTLM v2 hashes sent to me, and that's cool. I could try to crack them, or I could relay them. And that's when...
And that's the kicker.
Yes. So relay X, right? And so what I can do is because this is salted and it kind of has a time limit to me, I can elicit, right? Other computers are sending me these hashes. That's great. But then I could just throw those hashes back at other systems with the authentication of whatever that user was. If that user happens to have a high level of privilege in the domain, then I could send it at a computer. Maybe, it's fictitiously speaking, let's say I was able to get like a domain administrator account and relay that hash to another system, maybe the domain controller, and now I could do whatever, right? I could send it commands, I could do whatever in this kind of relay scenario. So stepping back to what this actual vulnerability is that if we can elicit the domain controller to send the computer, it's not a user account, the computer hash, we can then relay that to something else, okay? Now, what would be useful? Now, here is a kicker. You can't send the system account, right? Or the computer account, excuse me. You can't send the hash back to itself. So I can't relay it back on itself and be like, hey, you just sent this
but you
supposedly
can. But you can forward it, right? That's something you can do, because they actually,
hold on,
that vulnerability with that SMB reflection, they actually fixed that vulnerability all the way back in 2008.
Yes.
So
we can't send it back to itself, but we can send it to anybody else, okay? Anybody else. Now, there is a candidate that we would like to send it to, and that's the next piece of this attack, which is the certificate authorities in the domain, okay? And so what we can do is we can send the computer hash to a certificate authority, an Active Directory certificate authority, and request a certificate. Now, this gets into Kerberos. We could request this, it will get to that point. We can request a SSL certificate for that machine, okay? And it will sign a request and give us that certificate. We can then take that SSL cert, and this is an account cert. It's not like a cert for web traffic per se, right? It's the same kind of certificate. And then we could take that certificate, this SSL certificate, and we can use something like Rubius or something like that and actually request a Kerberos ticket, which will be valid for that machine account, right?
Which is
the domain controller.
Which is the domain controller.
And then once I have a Kerberos ticket, a valid Kerberos ticket for the domain controller, I could just log in as the machine on the domain controller, DA, game over.
Or anything else that
anything you want. Yes, exactly.
Now that all sounds like it's a lot of steps, but it all basically boils down to, at the beginning, it basically allows you to force that domain controller to come to you over NTLM.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. You can beckon a domain controller or arguably any system in the domain to just send you its hash.
Yep.
Cool. That is super useful, right?
Yep.
And then the second piece of it is actually related to certificate authorities. Now, I am going to put like the double, triple caveat in here. So there is a bunch of things that have to happen. One is this attack will work pretty much unconstrained right now. So like right now, any of us can go request this NTLM v2. There's not really anything that needs to be set up. But to send it to a certificate authority in the domain, that needs to be enabled, right? Mm-hmm. In addition, the ability to create user certs needs to be enabled. And there's a couple other things that need to happen for this all to work out, right? So it's not quite just like insta-DA, but it is a fun attack, and it definitely, in a lot of environments, is totally possible to do.
So I like to talk about vulnerabilities like this because I think it shows where the future is going, right? Like whenever people think about vulnerabilities, they tend to think in terms of, buffer overflow, heap overflow style attacks. Very, very simple. I send this to a system and I get shells, right? And those are really easy vulnerabilities to get your head around. And then those are the vulnerabilities that tend to be patched the quickest. Josh Wright, a SANS instructor who took over 504 from me, he has this law. It's Josh Wright's law, that many vendors will not patch or fix a vulnerability unless there is a Metasploit module that takes advantage of that vulnerability. And it's funny because, it seems to be kind of true, actually. When you start to get to these higher level vulnerabilities, you're not attacking something like a buffer overflow, right? You're actually attacking the architecture. And these particular vulnerabilities take more time to actually get patched. And then the worst thing is, a lot of these vulnerabilities, even after they're patched, there may be lingering side effects. So an example of something that was really, really, really basic but hard to patch was years ago we had group policy preference files back in the great year of 2008, or the year I like to call the year of Kaminsky. That's really when we started seeing the group policy preference file vulnerability. Microsoft released a patch. Problem was the patch didn't overwrite all the GPP files that used to have the password hash within it. So these vulnerabilities oftentimes just don't go away super easily. We may find another way to reflect it. So you see these vulnerabilities getting more complicated. And inversely, what happens is the likelihood of organizations to actually patch and deal with those vulnerabilities starts to go down because they're very difficult to start wrapping your head around. So that's one of the reasons why I love this vulnerability with the reflection and bouncing it off of different services. And I'd love to get you guys' opinion on this. Usually whenever something like this happens, people start looking at additional other services to see if they can reflect and do the same type of thing. And it doesn't just get patched and get fixed very quickly. Researchers start looking at additional services to try to replay a similar variant of this type of attack.
Yeah, and I was actually I don't see any solid IOCs for this attack. I'll admit I didn't start looking until during the webcast, but it would get interesting because, like you said, where would you even start to patch this? You'd almost have to start to patch this on the certificate authority.
Well, the biggest thing is shutting down NTLM. Like that's something.
True.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think we've been shouting to shut down NTLM since 2009. Or was it a 6? Was it 2006? I can't remember. A 6 could turn out to be a 9, but I don't mind. But we've been basically telling organizations to shut that off. But once again, a lot of them are like, is it a Metasploit? No? Oh, okay. Well, Nessus and Qualys and all of these tools, they tell me that I've got all these other like red and purple things I need to take care of first. And we'll get to those. And eventually, a decade and a half later, we'll get around to shutting down NTLM organizations.
I actually remember that when I was first getting into InfoSec, I started out with some like Black Hills webcast, and one of the first webcasts I ever watched was about NTLM and what it was and what you could do with it. And I remember you adamantly saying like, you should never have this turned on in your environment ever.
See, and that's one of the things, like whenever we start talking about these vulnerabilities, like link local multicast name resolution, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Windows just recently within the past couple of months is disabling it by default, right? And we've been using that for the better part of a decade. We talked about, Responder and NTLM Relay X and using that to take advantage of that vulnerability. But what happens with these 0 days or these types of vulnerabilities is they quickly become forever days because people don't actually shut things like NTLM down or enable SMB signing properly. So these things just continue to lurk and linger in an environment for a long, long, long time. Erica Zelli just said, but change control, right?
We do need NTLM net auth. I mean, like we're just, this is all part of it. There is some mitigation controls that Microsoft said, and in fact, they were just kind of like, this really isn't a vulnerability because.
Oh, I hate it. I hate that. We had that problem years ago. Whenever Bo came up with the two-factor authentication bypass with OA, where basically you could go to an OA portal, you could use Mail Sniper, and you could hit the OA portal to enumerate user IDs and password hashes, and then you could go to Exchange Web Services to authenticate and bypass that two-factor authentication. And Microsoft's total response to that was, well, if that's the way people want to configure it, I mean, people going to do what people going to do, I guess, So, and by the way, thank you, Microsoft. That allowed us to gain access to systems at BHIS for the better part of 5 years. So
it's a feature, right? It's a feature.
It's a feature. Speaking of features, do we want to move to how to mitigate Microsoft Windows 10 and Windows 11 Serious SAM vulnerability?
They just have a serious attack going on, just everything with Microsoft right now.
Well, and to be fair, Linux had that vulnerability. I can't remember the name of it, but it was a local privilege escalation vulnerability as well, which we can talk about that too. But I love it before Windows 11 comes out, like officially all over the place. People are already putting in their titles. How to mitigate the vulnerability in Windows 10 and 11.
Ooh, 11, the new hotness.
The new hotness has it. Now, this one's a lot easier to take advantage of. You said that, when you're talking about petty potom, there's a lot of things that have to line up, and they often do. Mm-hmm. This one seems to be a lot more like straight on the nose. You want to talk about this one a little bit, Ralph?
Yeah, sure. So this one is attacking the local SAM file. So the kind of the high level here is that this isn't supposed to be possible. Okay, you're not supposed to be able to read the SAM files as
a standard user. Yeah,
as a standard user, unprivileged user. As an administrator, sure, you can do this. And so the way it works is that it's using the volume shadow copy. And if your system, so this is kind of where the caveats come in again for this attack. You do have to have a system that has more than 128 gigs of space, right? Like on the OS, which nowadays
my Chromebook is safe.
Yes. and then the other thing is that volume shadow copy does need to be running. And only certain versions of Windows 10 are affected, even though it's a large swath of them. It's not just like only one version, very specifically.
How many versions of Windows 11, though?
I don't know. Who knows?
I don't even know.
It's been like a mad dash for people testing out all the different versions and saying it works in this, it doesn't work.
And watching that on Twitter, like the pen testing community is like, it works here. It's like, they're running around looking for golden
exactly.
tickets.
Yeah, I got it to work.
It works
That's
here.
been great.
And
this was introduced by a patch, right? This was a vulnerability that was introduced that reduced the permissions, the security permissions.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened. And so really what happens is that if the system is vulnerable, which now there's a bunch of tools that can check quickly, see if volume shadows copy, blah, 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 you can read the SAM file. And so you'll get local administrator or local accounts, right? So local NTLM hashes on the system. Most of the time, in like a legitimate scenario, the way this would be useful is privilege escalation. Okay, so I was a regular user. Now I have the administrator account or some other account on there that is an administrator, and I have the NTLM hash, and now I can auth. Now, in certain scenarios, though, if you're using LAPS or you've disabled the Red 500 account and some other kinds of security controls where possibly there is no current local administrator account, this would not be useful. But in all the other scenarios,
wait. Let's back up on that. So let's talk about LAPS, right? So LAPS allows you to actually change the local administrator account to be a different randomized password for each local administrator account, which is great. That's awesome. Do that. That's a good idea. However, years ago, we used to always go after that account, get the password hash, then we could do pass the hash to multiple workstations because the local administrator account would be the same on all those systems. So the hash would be the same. The problem is, in many organizations, they have other accounts that they put on systems for like backup services, remote management systems, things like that. So yes, we may not be able to take advantage of the local administrator account, but if your organization has other services that install an administrative-like account, remember LAPS only applies to RID 500 or the built-in local administrator account. If you add in other administrative level accounts, then we gain access to those password hashes using Serious SAM. So I just wanted to clarify, yes, the utility is far less now than it was a few years ago, but we do see environments very commonly that'll have multiple different local accounts that are an administrative level account. So sorry, go ahead, Ralph. It completely derailed you.
Yeah, I totally lost.
And Ralph, just for the sake of some of the viewers, like what is stored in the SAM?
Oh, yeah. So cool. So the security account manager, whenever you're looking at a Windows system, there's a bunch of stuff there, but the stuff that we're predominantly interested in are password hashes. So if you're looking at it, usually you'll have the user name and then a colon and then the RID, which is a number. So RID 500 is administrator, 501 is the guest account. Then the other accounts that aren't the built-in two accounts start at 1001 and work their way up. So like if I have an account, it'll be like 1004 will be my RID for my account on a system. And then there'll be another colon. There'll be the blank landman password hash, which is AADB3, and I can't remember the rest of it. And then there'll be a colon, and then there'll be the NT password hash, which is a straight MD4 hashing of your actual password. So if we can get access to the SAM, we can actually pull all of the user accounts, their RIDs, and we can gain access to the landman if that even exists anymore. But it's always stored there, even if it's empty. And then colon and then the NT password hash as well. So we'll be able to pull all of those things. So the problem is you have it someplace secure and use volume shadow copy that makes a snapshot backup of your system. So if you ever reboot your system a whole bunch of times, it'll say, hey, do you want to restore from a previous version of Windows? That's volume shadow copy. And then it will basically store it there and then you can pull it out. Now, the thing I think is hilarious about this is I just did a webcast like 2-3 weeks ago on ransomware, and we were talking about Racine, and we were like, with the VS admin utility, you can do snapshots. You can create those volume shadow copy snapshots. And then I was like, and no one ever uses delete ever. So except for ransomware attackers, they're the only people that are going to use the delete command. And now you literally have blogs telling organizations to use the VS admin tool to go through, or VSS admin tool to go through and delete all the volume shadow copies. It's like, God damn it. And then there's also some articles that talk about actually changing the permissions. But I think this is going to be something that Microsoft is going to fix relatively quickly. I don't think that they can look at this and be like, it's a feature.
I don't think they can call this one a feature. Not very easily.
Category.
What's that?
I don't think they can call this one a feature. That would be the stretch at like the highest level.
Yeah, no, there's just absolutely no way.
Wait for that patch, guys. It's coming.
Yeah, it's coming. But in the meantime, if you're a red teamer or a pen tester, it's awesome.
Have at it. There's already some Cobalt Strike pre-built execute assemblies to just give you all that sweet love, tell you if it's there or not, if it's vulnerable. I mean, everything you want and more.
So Bodio, I'm going to go with Bodio, said, I turned on NTLM v2 once, and the whole organization turned upside down as lots of stuff stopped working. You know what I can tell you about your environment, Bodio, is there's a lot of legacy technology. If I had to guess, it would be like a university, a hospital, a military installation, a bank, pretty much anywhere, I guess. So the problem is a bunch of applications, they actually do use NTLM, or God help you, there's some that actually still require a landman authentication. That gets into a whole nother conversation about legacy technologies integrating with Active Directory. But I think that Bodio's cautionary tale that he put out serves everybody to like be careful before you do these things.
Speaking of landman too, that's the other thing too. If you can do a downgrade attack on that process, right? So sending the getting that NTLM net v2 hash, if you're able to get a downgrade to a LM hash, you can crack that thing so fast. It's unbelievable, man. My cell phone can crack it. Like, it's ridiculous, right?
And ZDHD asked, will rainbow tables on SAM files ever be a thing? They actually won't stop being a thing. Rainbow tables work just fine because it hasn't been fixed. The landman and the NT password hashes, the problem with those password hashes is they don't use salt. So there's no randomization. So if I crack a hash once for like Apple, unicorn, whatever, ice cream, then that password or those passwords will have the same hashes all over the world. Now, I don't think we use rainbow tables as much as we used to, because we could just go straight into dictionary attacks with word mangling, which tends to be far more effective these days.
So it's two things, right? Just to hit up why don't we use rainbow tables if they're not actually broken? So a hash with a salt would obviously prevent a rainbow table from working. But the reason we don't use it is because they get really big really fast, right? An 8-character rainbow table is something like, I don't know, it's like 20, 30 terabytes or something. And so now you need a system that can scan through that quickly. The problem is they get bigger, right? As we add another character, right? And we want to cover the whole key space. Yeah,
it doubles almost every time. Yep, exponential.
And it gets really wild. Now, the thing is that we're telling customers, rightfully so, or anyone who will listen, hey, use like 12 character passwords a minimum or whatever, to make these long characters. Now, for us to still attack those, right, we start looking less at about the full key space and more about how people make passwords. And that's where Hashcat and other things can actually try a lot faster. And truth be told, currently with how fast GPUs are and how many we can throw in one system, an 8-character NTLM hash stands no chance nowadays, especially in a brute force scenario. So it really doesn't really pay off. And the big question is whether storage is faster or graphics cards. And because of Bitcoin mining and other kinds of cryptocurrencies, graphics cards are fast. And so, yes, that's why we do it. And we can use passwords that are crazy long. Like, I've cracked 20-character passwords before. You might be like, how did you do it? Well, they used a phrase or a sentence that's really common, right? So.
And I think that's key, right? Whenever we're talking about passwords, years ago, Wired, whenever they first were writing about, whenever they were talking about GPU cracking, they were like, oh, they can totally crack 21-character passwords. And it's like, that's a little bit of a deceiving statement. They're not brute forcing a 20 or a 21 character password, right? That takes a long time, we're talking a long time. usually what they're doing is they're using some type of dictionary style attack where they're using word mangling and then putting combinations and using phrases as well. So yeah, passwords are fun. I think passwords are going to be here for a while. I know that we've had a couple of shows where people are like, "Oh, passwordless society." It's like, I don't think so. I don't think so.
My voice is my password.
Yeah, please grant me access. It's like, I remember even when I was a kid and I saw that, I was like, "That's dumb." Couldn't somebody just like record that? Like, would that work, or am I an idiot? I'm like 10 years old. Do we want to move to the ransomware section of the show?
There's a lot for that topic.
We have special theme music for the ransomware section.
Do we?
We do. No. We need Bo to come up with ransomware segment music. Something with like a face peeler, like it's like, no, you've gone to hell and Satan's playing guitar now. That's what we need. So Kaseya got the decryptor key, and
dun, dun, dun.
Let's go around. How do you guys think they got it? I know we talked about this already pre-show banter. But
I actually, here's my prediction. A guy was driving in a truck and it fell out, like a USB drive fell out the back of the truck near their office, corporate headquarters, and somebody picked it up and it said decryption key on it, and they brought it inside. That's how they got it.
I could believe that. My thought was that they just asked nicely and they were like, "Oh yeah, you know what? Here you go."
I think that there was a firm talking to the ReEvil ransomware group. They're like, "Look, guys, this isn't cool. You guys can do better.
I think you can do better, and we're going to do jobs."
I think all of your parents would be disappointed. You're like, "Oh, shucks, mister. Here's the key."
I'm not upset with you. I'm just disappointed.
Yeah, I'm just disappointed. It's impressive what you all did. I mean, a 0-day against a web portal. Part of me is proud. I'm not afraid to admit it. But after that, it's like Leave It to Beaver hacking.
Oh
it's
my
like,
God.
"Oh, geez, really Dad." And then there's some theories that Biden called up Putin in Russia and was like, "Look, here's the deal. Here's the deal.
We're not Putin up with you anymore.
We're tired of this malarkey. Give us the key." And Putin's like, "Aw, shucks, Mr. Biden. Your folksy ways from Scranton just showed us what we need to do." And out came the key. But let's be honest. Whenever you're looking at all these different things, from a suitcase that fell off of a truck, usually money. They were probably like, I know you're asking for, was it $50, $70 million? Who cares at this point? But how about we pay you $5 and we call it a day? And they're like, "Sure, here's the key." Bitcoins, y'all.
That was $4 more than we were expecting to get from you.
I know.
Ethereum and Bitcoin, y'all. Just coming all over the place there. They
have a money machine, like one of those little guns, but instead of dollars, it just sends out little Bitcoins, right?
Yeah. Just, shooting it at ReEvil. Now, the other thing I think is interesting is we had DarkSide and ReEvil. They shut their website down and they quote unquote disbanded as soon as they got paid. Yeah.
I mean, if someone gives me $5 million, like, I'm probably going on vacation too. So
yeah, right.
Yeah, they're taking a break.
Or no, what they call on the run from the feds. It's
yeah.
Like, where are we going, kids? Are we going to the beach, Dad? No, we're going to the basement of an abandoned warehouse, children.
We're having a walkabout.
Yeah, they weren't shutting down. They were rebranding. Okay, they're rebranding as a new.
I still think that's what DarkSide was doing. Like,
yeah,
I am to this day convinced that DarkSide is just going through a rebranding.
Yeah, or they're under new management now.
Yeah. New management, yeah.
That's my favorite sign when you drive by some restaurant, like under new management. Like the other one was horrible, now it's better. Sorry, but
we acknowledge that we had crappy management before, and now we're trying to do a little better.
Yeah.
Anonymous just said, "Don't mind the jet skis, son. We're in hiding."
Yeah.
I don't know. That's got to be a really stressful career. I'm sure that they make lots of money, and that's great. But I don't know. It sounds like it's a super stressful way of living. I wish you could remember years ago there were some attackers. I think that they were part of the Get Rich or Die Trying group that actually gained access to TJ Maxx. I think they got a hold of Gonzalez. This is a long time ago. But one of them was transitioning through Turkey on the run. He was wanted, and he was with his girlfriend, and they were transitioning through Turkey, and Turkey arrested him. And the United States, like Turkey's like, hey, we got this hacker that you guys have been looking for. And the United States authorities are like, what, Turkey, you got him? And they're like, yeah. United States authorities are like, we good. We're fine. You take care of this one for us. So that's just, you just see the attacker. I'm not getting extradited to the United States. Nope. Have you ever heard of Turkish prisons? You're going to love it.
It's the gulag.
It's the gulag, right? If you're lucky.
If you're lucky.
I do want to keep this thing rolling. So I want to keep on the Kaseya like bandwagon for just a couple more seconds, because this whole thing turns dark real quick. We're talking about Turkish prisons. We're just going to lighten it up here.
Segued.
Kaseya is making their customers sign a non-disclosure agreement to get the key.
Standard operating procedure. Everyone knows this.
Is it?
After all, when you do things that are perfectly normal, you always tell people not to tell them about.
Yes, exactly. Anytime you're in a conversation, they're like, you know what? We're going to help you out, but you need to sign this non-disclosure. That means something, man.
It's it's time to take a couple steps back and be like,
but did they throw in a year of identity protection?
They give a year of lifelock. Dude, I'm telling you, it's good. His social security number was on the side of trucks, and
you only got his ID stolen twice.
The Jelly of the Week Club. We're gonna sign you up for that too. I don't understand like what the hell is going through people's heads at Kaseya. Like, I know it's attorneys, right? I've been part of these conversations. What happens, you get a bunch of attorneys like, well, we need to have every single one of our customers sign a non-disclosure agreement. And there's no one in the company that's standing up and being like, yeah, that's dumb. Let's not do that. I know that he's an attorney. I know he's got lots of degrees, or she's got lots of degrees, but they're idiots and we need to fire them. Let's not do, dear God, what they just said. Because like, I want you to like think this through. Like, number one, is it gonna work? You all have heard of the Streisand effect, right? Where let's say Kaseya said, here's the secret sauce. This is how we got the key back. By calling attention to it through a non-disclosure agreement, and they've got literally thousands of customers, that crap is gonna get leaked, right?
Oh yeah.
There's no way that it's not going to get leaked. So if you believe that having someone sign a non-disclosure agreement means they're not going to talk about it at home with their significant other, with their kids when they're out jet skiing, if you don't think that they're going to have that conversation, you're an idiot attorney.
I read that on
immediate. I shouldn't say idiot. That's really a pejorative. How about an ignorant attorney? Let's stick with that.
Ignorant's a good word.
In the best possible way.
I read.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I read this on Twitter. It was anything that you tell someone to like keep hey, keep this a secret. They are going to tell their significant other. Just know that that other person will know too, right? Like that's probably going to happen, right?
Even when I was working in the cleared world, and Ralph, you've been in the military. Even the military, like whenever I was in ISO, we knew people were going to talk to their significant others. I mean, we'd like to pretend, and I'm kind of out, so I could talk about this now. But if it ever came out like, oh, we think this guy told his wife or she told her husband, it's like, okay, like what now, right? So they're gonna talk. And then the other thing is, from a legal perspective, I kind of, and I'm not an attorney, mind you, even though I'm ragging on attorneys pretty hard here, I kind of don't think it's enforceable. And I want to explain why. The Consumer Fairness Protection Act pretty much makes it illegal for companies to put non-disclosure agreements, gag orders, on their customers. Like, I don't think you can do that. If we have an attorney that's listening, maybe they can clue us in. But I'm 99% certain. I could be wrong. That 1%'s a big 1%. Probably much larger than 1%. That's birth control for you. I kind of think if it got to court and they're like, well, John Strand told people about how we achieved this key. We received this key for Vladimir Putin by way of Biden. He gave it to us personally. I don't think.
It's the only way.
I think the Consumer Fairness Protection Act allows customers to talk to each other about the services that you receive from a company. And not only that, Consumer Fairness Protection Act actually retroactively invalidated every single non-disclosure agreement that a company put on their customers as well.
All I got to say is, as soon as they said this, I'm like, you definitely paid, man. Like, I don't.
You think
no
that that's it? That's what leads you to think?
You dealt your cards. You're like, okay, guys, we're telling you, we're giving you the encryption key, but you can't tell anyone how we got it because we paid.
Yeah.
I'm with Ralph on that one. That was the first thing that I saw.
I think I'm
when I saw that, I'm like, yep, that's definitely what happened.
It was either that or Biden was making a phone call, and I'm really leaning the other direction.
Yeah.
Okay?
Well, okay, and so the Biden phone call thing, I kind of am against that, because if Biden was able to make a phone call to Vladimir Putin and get the key personally, there's no freaking way politically, and I'm not talking just Biden, right? Any politician, if they're able to pull that crap off, like they're walking around town, waving the key around. Look what I got you! Oh, I got the key! I mean, there's no way they're keeping that crap quiet, right?
There's a parade. There's all that
parade, ticker tape. Yeah, it's. There's no way. I seriously, if I had to put my money down, I would say they paid. And I seriously don't think they paid like $50 or $70 million.
No, they got a sweetheart deal, you know.
Yeah, and one of the articles, I don't know if it's this one that Ryan threw up on the screen or not. I love how there's a bunch of quotes from companies that paid the ransom separate of Kaseya. They're like, so we paid. Are we getting a refund now? Like, how does that work? So
hey, I thought this was a Groupon, guys. Come on.
Now, whenever you look at the customer support issues surrounding this logistically, I can understand why the ReEvil gang shut down. They're like, I don't want to support this crap. Like, I don't want people contacting me and being like, hey, can I get a refund? No, I'm sure
they didn't want to run the helpline anymore. I mean, Jesus.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I decided to get my encryption key from someone else, so I'm just going to be returning this one. It's within 30 days of purchase. It's fine. I have a receipt.
I can pull that Bitcoin back, right?
Store credit.
Erica Zelli had a question. Can a company hit you with a lawsuit for talking about proprietary information that's already on GitHub publicly? They can if they're the government. Like, I knew from a clearance perspective, if something was classified and it was released publicly, I was not able to discuss it. But yeah, I honestly, I don't, they can sue. Okay, let me back up, Erica. You can always be sued. So remember that axiom in this industry. Because anytime you're ever like, well, we want to prevent us from getting sued, wrong question. Question is, can you be sued successfully? And I think that there's a lot of variation in that. I know there were some old DMCA lawsuits where there were certain pirated keys and things that were put on publicly, and they tried to go after some people, and they tried to use the defense that it was already loaded in a bunch of places already. I think 2600 was actually sued because they posted a link that had another whole bunch of links of other pages that had the keys for, I think it was encryption for DVDs, and they were basically still sued, I believe, successfully. Don't quote me on that, because their whole entire defense was it's already all over the internet, and the judge was like, no, that doesn't apply. So I could be wrong on that.
The thing about this lawsuit thing, though, is whenever I think of these large companies, like think Google, Apple, Microsoft, right? You're not going to sue them. I don't care how much you think it's right or wrong. Like they could just beat you in court forever. Like even if you're right,
and even if they sue you, right? Like you can try suing them, but if they come after you, right? They have more attorneys than you have dollars in your bank account.
Just give up and roll over at that point.
Give up and roll over. Play dead. Play dead, Noah. Play dead.
You know, there's one thing I always remember, and that's pick your battles, right? Is this one worth fighting? And you know, a lot of times, and anytime there's a lawyer involved, it's just like, no, I'm out, man. Like this is not worth. This is all money. It's all money, man. It's all money. It's not about you and me.
Years ago, Security Weekly, I got to tell this story. So Paul Azadorian, he named his podcast Paul.com, all spelt out, right? And the guy that owned the domain Paul.com was actually a domain squatter. That's literally what he did. Is he bought domains and then squatted and then sold them. We basically went through all these different things to try to get the domain and purchase the domain, do it legally. And the guy kept on telling us, he's like, look, I'm like 5 steps ahead of you guys. Just freaking pay me. And this is going to go so much better for you than you guys trying to go through your attorneys. Of course, Paul is all like, no. And he's talking to me. I'm like, let's get him. Larry's like, let's get him. So and then, of course, the attorneys for Paul are like, let's get him. And here's our bill. They love this idea of going after this.
This is amazing.
This is a great thing, right? So what we eventually found out is the guy, I can't remember the guy's name, but he actually had a partner that was an attorney, and he could literally generate legal documents for free. And anytime we had to do anything with our attorneys, we had to pay like hundreds of dollars an hour. And that's whenever we realized it was just like the asymmetry of the entire thing. It was impossible. And like Paul rebranded to Security Weekly like overnight and abandoned everything associated with Paul.com. But that gets into that whole thing. You can always be sued, number one. Don't sue IBM. Don't sue Google. Don't sue Apple. They're going to grind you into the dirt. And if you got to be careful about who you take advice from, because if you're taking advice from attorneys that are like, you can totally win this, Ralph. We can fight this. What they mean is, you have a lot of money, Ralph.
Yeah,
and I want that
from
money.
You. We got to give that money to us.
As long as you got
Bitcoin,
money,
Ralph,
I'm on your side.
Oh yeah, then that's how lawyers work.
And that's how lawyers make money.
Interestingly enough, that's almost how ransomware operators work too. You have money and we want.
Oh my God, that's good. Oh geez. So yeah, it's like, so we want to fight these guys. I'm like, do you really want to fight these guys? Yeah, we're not going to pay them a dime. We don't pay terrorists, and I want to go after these attackers. Really? You sure? Like, because this is what they do for a living. Oh my God. All right. So I think that's good. Do we have any other stories that we all want to hit, or do you think that we got a good smattering today?
A smattering. We got a little ransomware. We got multiple Microsoft vulnerabilities.
All right.
And I mean,
I think that's enough. But let's look at this from this week. Like, we have the Kaseya thing with the key. We have two vulnerabilities in Microsoft. One's a domain takeover. One's a local privilege escalation. There's the vulnerability in Linux. It's like, it's a busy week in the world of computer security. It's a busy
bingo. Week. Yeah. Microsoft's having they had a bad last week, and it's like rolling over into next week. That's
part two.
Just busy at Microsoft.
I mean, it's tough being on top of that.
Whatever that
vulnerability heap is.
Whatever that is.
The one with all the lawyers.
Yeah.
But you know what? At this point, they're used to it.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel a little bit bad for them, but they can handle it. Microsoft, you can take it. We need you, Microsoft, because we need someone to take on Google and Amazon.
Yeah. In the epic war of worlds.
Yeah. I still think it's funny that Ralph has a drawing of Jeff Bezos' Starship on his server rack. I think that's kind of cute and adorable.
It is, actually. And Jeff Bezos is, I mean, he's an astronaut, so why not?
Actually, they're going to take his astronaut wings away from him. That's just funny.
What does this world come to?
I hate how that. So I wear cowboy hat and cowboy boots a lot. I hate that jackass has ruined cowboy hats and cowboy boots for me. Like, it's like
ruined, dude. Now you're just like the old billionaires out there flying to the moon.
People are looking at, what does it guy think he is, Jeff Bezos? Jonathan King says astronaut in quotes.
Yes.
So we're all for sending billionaires into space. Coming back.
Nobody wanted him to come back, by the way. There was a big petition not to let him come back. Like, was that gonna work?
That's so cold.
There was so many petitions though. There was like multiple of them, and it was like I didn't know what was going on at first, and I just saw this petition to not let Jeff Bezos return to Earth, and I'm like, wait, what?
You know what? And you almost feel bad for him, like. And then you realize that he's the world's richest man, and you realize he's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
he's going to handle this.
This is a small bump in a flight out of Earth.
Jeffrey
that divorce, and he's going to be fine.
I just want to know, like, how would they have enforced that if it would have passed? If they would have got enough signatures on those petitions?
Just shot it down. They just shot it down on the way back. There was like, it's a one-way trip, guys.
That's so not funny. I'm sorry. I shouldn't be laughing at that. That's so.
I was going to say, well, but then he would still be returning to Earth technically. So I mean, you have to go to like an escape orbit and like send them.
Send him to Mars. Send him to Mars. He can do the pre-mission for Elon Musk. By the way, Jonathan King had a thing that's relevant to the show. He said banning
Unlike everything you said.
cryptocurrencies. That's not going to get rid of cryptocurrencies or ransomware. Yeah, that's true. I think wasn't it Kevin Mandia that was going on the news and basically saying, well, if you support cryptocurrencies, you're supporting ransomware and organized crime. And I'm like, so Kevin and I have a history. So Kevin, that is like the third or fourth dumbest thing I've ever heard you say. So that's like bad.
Using dollars and being like, you're supporting drugs every time you buy something with dollars.
Yeah, every time you use a credit card, you're supporting crime. It's like we live in a capitalist society, Kevin. Like
you wanted this.
Well, yeah, and like at one point there was a period of time, and I don't know if it's still going on, but I read several articles where the underground in Hawaii was using canned spam as a currency, and they were exchanging it for drugs. So you can literally use anything as a currency.
So if I use spam, I'm supporting drug use in Hawaii. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what, using the same logic. Yes, that's correct.
It's crazy.
Wow. It's what we do. We don't realize. No more
stuff
spam
you don't think
for me.
about. It's the stuff you don't think about.
Get you every day.
Yeah. As you're on your phone reading about people at Foxconn throwing themselves off the top of buildings going, that's horrible. Scroll.
Right. Next article.
Yeah, there we go. All right. Sorry. Well, this whole entire episode was gallows humor. People are like, why are you laughing about this? Because sometimes it's literally the only way that we can cope.
Yeah, laughter.
It's that or drinking, and I don't drink alcohol anymore. This is what you have. All right, so that's it, everybody. Let's wrap it up. Ryan, take us out, sir.
There's this one article here that says, nasty Mac OS malware, XCset or whatever, however you say that one. I read that as the malware was called Nasty. Like, Nasty, the Mac OS malware.
Shuffle those letters around and it'd go together.
If I ever make malware, that's what I'm going to have to name it, I guess, now. Oh no, we've been infected with Nasty. And they're like, wait, what? I swear that some people who name malware, they do name it just so that way that there's some awkward CEO meeting where they have to explain that they've been hacked by like Boobs S or something, like it's just whatever, they come up with these obscene names because they're like, these should never take place in a professional environment, and then they're like, but wait, they will.
It's not just malware, like a lot of InfoSec tools go that way.
Yeah, they went away from the cool names like Cobalt Strike, and then they went to just random crap after a bit.
That's the next one. Is literally going to be called random crap. The random crap malware.
I'd like to introduce my new C2 framework. It's just called random crap. Oh no, I think I've detected some random crap beacons. Wait, what? What are you talking about over here?
See, it's brilliant. It works.
What's that over there? Oh, that's just some random crap. Oh, okay.
Oh, that's old. That's some old.
No, you should have been looking into that. It was random crap, the application. Yep, that's it now. You just, I'm gonna have to like go spend a lot of time with Joff, learn how to make a C2 channel, and then I'm gonna name it random crap.